In verse 28 of 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul is discussing gifts as what people want, how he's distributed them. There are two. Hold up one finger and say there are two, right? There are two problems, and they're not problems caused by God, they're problems caused by the perversity of mankind. The Bible teaches, although it does not use the word, it teaches what is called man's total depravity. And I believe that the proper description of that is not that we are totally incapable, totally unable, as the Calvinists would tell us, but rather that this corruption spreads through the totality of man's being. In other words, every part of us. It's not that we are as wretched as we can be, but that it pervades all of our humanity. In other words, every part of us is affected by this. Not equally. You may be more depraved in one part of yourself than I am, and I would be more depraved in a certain part of myself than you are. I'm well aware of my depravity. I fight it. I hate it. I deal with it. In fact, I think I'm just, it's just astounding. And it is persistent and it's stubborn, and it never goes away in this life. So we have to deal with it. So because of that, our depravity also affects the spiritual. The Bible tells us that our sin comes from three particular things: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Now, you cannot, I know people like to do it, but I figured out a long time ago, you cannot say, well, that's a lust of the flesh sin. You say, why not? Well, because you see, you're dealing with motivation. And what will give you an example? It says that all kinds of bad things have been done because of the love of money. So you say, well, if you steal something, that's the love of money. No, not necessarily. You see, a person could steal something not because he really particularly wants it, but because, or he wants it in what might be considered the classical reason, but he may want it because it enables him to have a particular kind of persona. So that would be pride. Okay, he may steal something because if he has it, if she has it, then it enables them to exercise some lust of the flesh. Or it could be that, you see it, you see it, you want it, that's lust of the eyes, okay? So, and I won't go into it, but I've got an illustration that shows perfectly how that any one of these can be so. But all of us, some of us have more problem with lust of the flesh than the other two, or lust of the eyes than the other two, or pride of life than the other two. And what we often do is we do what's called projection. In other words, because that's our problem, we project on others that's the same reason, that's the same problem they have, and that's the motivation for why they do what they do. We can't do that. Can't do that. But as it relates to these gifts, we could be proud of our particular gift. Oh, that pastor say it's not so. Well, I would like to say that, but we could be proud of our particular gift. My gift is better than your gift, or whatever. No, folks. God has chosen to give you and the other people the gifts that He wants them to have. The other problem is envy. Well, I want to have that instead of what I've got. No, we wouldn't do that, would we? Oh, no. No more than we would be proud of the one we've got. or to think ours is better than someone else's. No, you see, it's not something that I can take any credit for. It was, and God has, in His great benevolence and wisdom, determined that you should have what you have, and I should have what I have. Now, why? Well, that's a question for which there is no good answer, other than that that is what He has chosen. Now, so what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to exercise our gift. We are supposed to be, and one of the things I think is important for us to be able to exercise our gift is that we keep a right relationship with the Lord. Because you see, this is a spiritual thing. God is... Now, secondly, that when we are prompted, that we respond in obedience. That when God says, do this, we do it. Do you suppose that the people with the gift of evangelism never have the hesitancy to speak to a particular person? I think they do. I think they do. Do you suppose that a person with the gift of service never says, nah, that's too much work. I think I'd rather do this, or I'd rather take it easy today? Of course they do. Do you suppose that the person with the gift of mercy never says, oh, not today? Folks, it's there, all right? It's there. We have a free will. I know some people don't think we do, but they're wrong. We have a free will. Now, that free will is somewhat circumscribed by our sinful nature. In other words, given two choices, one that is spiritual and one that is non-spiritual, our tendency is toward the non-spiritual. But we do have a free will. We can, if we choose, do. All right? So, now in verse 28, God is giving us something here that's very important. Okay, if you go back up to verse 19, he says, if they were all one member, where were the body? The church is a body. A body has different parts. Why? Because it needs them. Because for the body to function, it must have those parts. One of the reasons I reject evolution is because there's a level of complexity so high that to think that it should ever happen by happenstance is a lot of baloney. It's utter nonsense. Design is written all over our body. And it is exceedingly complex. And there are parts of us that if just a little bitty tiny change, and it doesn't work. Now, one of the parts of our body, which is not absolutely necessary for us in every regard, is our reproductive system. But you know what? It's pretty important to the human race. You know what? If the prehistoric first human beings did not have that, or if it did not work right, then what would have happened? Well, that would have been a one generation. All right. You have an endocrine system. Okay, those are your hormones. You have hormones that just a little adjustment, and you're a mess. This stuff is very, very... Okay, so now we have a body. The church is a body. As a body, the church needs certain organs, certain, as the Bible calls them, members. So he says in verse 28, and God has set some in the church. First apostles, secondary prophets. Now we talked about that in Ephesians 4:11 and 12, that those are not, that those were foundational things, and now they do not exist. Thirdly, teachers. And I'm assuming there that this would probably, if we used, we allied it with Ephesians 4:11, we would say pastor teaches. After that, miracles. There again, the miracles. Now, does God still do miracles? Yes, He does. Does He do them in a showy way? No, He does not normally. Okay? Now, I'm going to say something that might bug some of you. There are occasions where God does do showy miracles. And somebody says, oh, no, 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 no. Oh, yes, 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 yes. No, no, no. Yes, He does. Let me give an example. Missionaries have had this experience. It's an experience that makes me glad I'm in New York and not in some privileged place. The missionary has a showdown with the shaman, the witch doctor, the dude with the bone in his nose, okay? So, this guy, this shaman, if he's the real deal, he's demonically controlled and empowered. And by the way, folks, demons do have power. Right. Okay, they have power. So the shaman walks on hot coals. That's the number one reason I'm glad I'm here and not there. Okay? So the missionary walks on what? The hot coals. Now what is that? That's a miracle. That's a miracle. The shaman does a particular supernatural thing. Why? Because he's demonically empowered. Demons have supernatural power. So the missionary's got to do the same thing. And when it's all said and done, the missionary's got to go one step further, that he does something that the shaman cannot do. Remember, you see, this is to show that God has power superior to what they have. Now, I've never had to do that, and I don't particularly look forward to it. I wouldn't want to do that. But the miracles in the New Testament were totally different. Gifts of healings. Does God heal? Yes, He does. Does He heal through faith evangelists and that sort of thing? No, He doesn't. Well, I'm not saying He never does, but that's not really a gift. It's gone. It's not out there anymore. Will it ever come back? It may come back during the tribulation period when the 144,000 Jewish evangelists go out into the world. Some of these things may come back. These were foundational for the church age. Now, I know some people are going to have a fit and say, no, 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 no. They ended, according to 1 Corinthians 13, with the completion of the canon. Well, first of all, let me say something to you. Prove that's what happened. Secondly, answer some questions for me, all right? Now, I do not believe that these things operate today because it says, verse 8 of 1 Corinthians 13, charity never faileth, but whether it be prophecy, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be shall knowledge, it shall vanish away. Now, these things are what's known is the middle voice, the middle voice. And what does that mean? It means that they ceased of their own accord. Why? Because their role, they had done what they were supposed to do. Now, verse 9 says, for we know in part, and we prophesy in part. People say, oh, well, you see, the canon's not finished. Let's keep reading. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. And they say, well, that's when the canon is complete, these things will be done away with. Well, let's skip down to verse 12. All right, here's the question. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as I am known. Has that come to pass? It has not. It has not. We still see through a glass darkly. We still see through a glass darkly. It says but then face to face. Now some people have said, well, this is there's male, female, and what is the other one?
Neuter.
well, I know neuter, but they don't usually use that term, do they, when they talk about language?
Yeah, it is new.
No, it's another word, but anyway, we know what we're talking about. And they say, well, if this were talking about this Jesus coming back, no, folks, you got to understand something. This is talking about an event. An event would be, what is that word? Or we'll say neuter, all right? It would not be masculine, it would not be feminine, it would be neuter, all right? It's an event. And besides, you got a real problem here trying to tell me that I see face to face, and now I know even as I am known. It's not there. Sorry, guys, you're going to have to look for another reason. That doesn't work. It does not work. So if that be the case, then that provides the possibility that these things will be operative, because what? In the Old Testament, God dealt with the world through Israel. Now he's dealing with the world through the church. But when the church is raptured, don't call the people that get saved in the tribulation the church. The church is gone. Tim LaHaye called them tribulation saints, which I think is a good way to say it, making a distinction between the believers now and the believers then. I believe that during the tribulation there will be a huge number of people that get saved. Now most of them will be martyred. They will be killed by the authorities. All right. So now, continuing, these exist. Helps, governments, not diversities of tongues. No, that's not there. That's not here now. Not in the way that that was in the Old Testament. At the beginning of the church age. Wouldn't that be a handy-dandy thing for the 144,000 evangelists to have? May exist, all right? Now, then he asks a question in verse 30. Have all people, all the gifts of healing? Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? No. God has given to you what he wants you to have. Now, I said we're not to covet. Now, some people read verse 31 and say, whoa, wait a minute. But covet earnestly the best gifts. The word covet there means strong desire. You want it. No, that's not for you. That's for the church. For the church to desire to have the best gifts. All right, and then he says, yet I showed you a more excellent way, and then he talks about love or charity. Some people say, oh, charity is a bad word there. No, I don't think it is, because you see, I think it emphasizes the action of love. The love causes to do something. You can love somebody and not show it. All right, you can. There are people that have that just don't. They're reticent to show love, and they feel awkward showing love, so they don't do it. They have it, but they don't show it. All right. So okay. So let's go back to our questionnaire. Number 13. This is leadership. Now, as I said last week, if no one follows, you can't lead. All right? And so there has to be a measure of effectiveness here. And as we've said before, when we exercise our gift, there is a corresponding effectiveness to that. When the person with the gift of mercy exercises mercy, the people on which they exercise it feel They have a response because, you see, what is my word? Unusual. It goes beyond just what is just what is natural. I don't know that it goes into the miraculous, but it goes in. It is unusual. They feel that they have been blessed. All right. When the person with evangelism witnesses, people get saved. I can witness to them. That person with the gift of evangelism witnesses to them. When I witness to them, they don't get saved. When the person with the gift of evangelism witnesses to them, they get saved. There's a measure. There's the aspect of effectiveness. So when I speak, people seem to listen and agree. Number 29. Other Christians have followed my leadership because they believed in me. I don't know about the believed in me. They have followed my leadership. It's really simply enough. They have followed. We don't know why they did it. We just know they did do it. All right. Number 44. When I set goals, others seem to accept them readily. People with the gift of leadership probably have the gift of vision. They see what others do not see, and that's one of the aspects of these spiritual gifts. Not necessarily in every one of them, but the person with the gift sees what other people don't see. The person with the gift of teaching sees things in the scriptures other people don't see. I'm not saying he sees something that no one's ever seen, but he sees things that other people don't see. Yes.
That sounds like there's also an aspect of faith to it as well, because you can't have vision without trusting the Lord.
Yeah, well, obviously, none of these gifts are totally isolated. It's not like you take one little particular thing. Now, by the way, folks, I think there's... Are you familiar with the term synergy? Synergy. Synergy. The prefix SYN means to put together. Synergy means to put energy together. What energy? The energy from different people. In other words, the body does not, each of the systems, if we could use that, each of the systems of the body do not function independent of one another. What affects this part of the body affects this part of the body, and all of the systems work together. In fact, was it 3 systems other than the reproductive, and you're dead if they stop functioning? There's 7 systems in your body other than the reproductive system. If any 3 of those fail, we're having your funeral. Okay?
3? That
3.
many?
Yeah. There's 7, 6 of which are absolute or necessary. So 3. And actually, if your kidneys fail, the rest of but now sometimes there's the domino effect. Okay? If your kidneys fail, you're going to die. Okay.
Sure, but they can put you on dialysis, so you're not
No,
dead.
that's an artificial system. Now, throughout all of history, if your kidneys failed, you died. Okay. Why? Because they're going to kill other systems. Okay. The kidneys are the filter. One of the filters of your body, your kidneys and your liver. And if your liver fails, you're going to die. Now it's going to have to kill 2 other systems before it happens. But you're gone. All right. Now today we can do dialysis and we can do certain things and we can help you along for a while. But throughout human history, when one of those filters went, it was only a matter of time before the toxins built up in your body and you died. So and by the way, folks, I never thought about this before until just a minute ago. This idea of synergy. The leader says, let's do this. The person with faith says, yeah. The person with the gift of service, you see, leaders, every leader must have people under them to do In 1877, D.L. Moody had a campaign in Brooklyn. That's back when Brooklyn was its own separate city. Thousands of people, hundreds of people at least, invited, set up chairs, evangelized, sang in the choir, all these things, okay? Those are necessary. Now some of these people just did it, but then there were others who had the gift of service, and we could go on and on. So when these gifts are being used, they are not being used in an isolated fashion. Number 61. When I join a group, others seem to back off and expect me to take the leadership. There again, I think there's too much mechanics in the statement. Everybody that's been in churches for very long has seen the conflict between God's leader and a carnal leader.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen it happens. It's between the person who is looking to help the body as opposed to the person that wants their way. Bad. Bad. And 78. I've enjoyed bearing the responsibility for the success of a particular task within my church. In other words, this has, I think the idea here is taking something, making it your own, and running with it. Taking something, making it your own, and running with it. Now when I say making it own, I don't mean that in a bad sense. I mean that you, by the grace of God, are going to make it succeed. And there again, there's that enablement. If the Spirit impresses it upon us, then He will enable us to do it. Administration. Now, I think that leadership and administration are closely related, but I do think there is a difference in this. The leader is here, the administrator is here. In what way? The leader leads, the administrator makes it happen. This is the person that sees the nuts and the bolts and the ins and the outs and the things that have to be done. This is the person that has the gift of putting a system together. You know, it's slowly occurring to me. It's one of those things that comes and goes in my thinking, okay? You know, you can't do something very well unless you've got a system to do it, okay? If you don't have a system, then you're going to find yourself frustrated. If you can be frustrated. Some people just, they're only frustrated when the lack of system creates angst and agita in their lives. When they can't find something. When whatever it might be. All right, so let's look at this. All right, number 14. When in a group lacking when a group is lacking organization, I tend to fill in the gap. Organization and system are very closely related. And folks, I don't care what you're talking about. Anything that is big must have administrators. Take the CEO of a corporation, for example, or just maybe just a company. I mean, it doesn't have to be very big. Who makes it work? The secretaries, or as we call them today, the administrative assistants. Years ago, there used to be secretaries, and above them were administrative assistants, and then the big kahuna. All right, now, you know what? If you can't give somebody a raise, give them a better title. Okay, so we don't have secretaries anymore. That we have administrative assistants, and administrative assistants, for the most part, are just secretaries. They're people with secretary salaries. All right. But you got to have somebody that does the nuts and bolts. There are thousands of details that must be taken care of to run anything of great consequence. And so they make it work. Question 30. I enjoy handling the details of organizing ideas, people, resources, and time for more effective ministry. The gift of administration. Now, the guy with vision and leadership, he doesn't get this. He can't do this. She can't do this. They just can't. They're in the military, you have strategy and you have tactics. And I can never seem to remember, but one is big and the other one is small. I think that strategy is the big one and tactics is the smaller one. And you have the Germans used to have, in World War II, they had what they call field marshals. Well, the British had them too, yeah, because Montgomery was a field marshal. We didn't have them. We just called them generals. Okay, they functioned as such. But then you have the general who is seeing the big picture, and then you have, and I can't remember the name of the unit command, and you have your generals, you have your generals, your colonels, your captains, your sergeants. This chain of command that makes things happen. Well, the person with the leadership sees the big picture, but without the administrator, it is going to flop. It has to have someone to take care of the myriad of details and smaller portions of the operation. 45. I have been able to make effective and efficient plans for accomplishing the goals of a group. Here's a man that comes up with the idea for a particular product. But who's going to make it work? The engineer. The engineer is the man or the woman, usually the man, that sits down and says, oh, we got to do something about that. That's a problem. I got it. Okay. And so when it's finished, it functions. All right. The leader, the corporate head may have the idea for the thing and said, well, we need to do this, but he doesn't have, or he may have part of it, but it is the engineer, for example, that brings it right up to the point where it does what it's supposed to do. Well, in a church, here's an interesting thing. Church planners frequently don't make very good pastors.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. In fact, the best church planner doesn't make a very good pastor because that's not his role. He's to go plant more churches, plant another church. And it's because he can't administer. Now, where this succeeds is where God gives him a person with the gift of administration, and that person with the gift of administration will more or less, he's the second man that takes care of all of the little things that make the church work. All right? But if he stays there by himself, And that's the same thing, in the corporate world. There are guys that go out and they start companies. Let them keep that company, they'll wreck it. Yes, sir.
So the administrator, I'm seeing, delegates to people responsibility to make it work. That's what I'm.
Yeah, he puts together a system, he runs the system, he delegates, and the people that, there you have a combination of people that have the gift of service and just regular people. Like I keep saying, and this is vital, you do not have to have the gift in order to do, but you must be careful that you do not allow the mundane, the second tier things to get in the way, so you have no time to exercise your spiritual gift. The good is the enemy of the best. The good is the enemy of the best. And when I say good, we're talking about, you remember in English you talk about the superlative is the highest.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, and I forget what the other two are called, but you go down like this. If you're spending your time on your second tier, all your time on your second tier, and you're never exercising your first tier, which is your spiritual gift, you're not doing it right. Now, I recognize that we struggle with this. I understand that. The urgent is the enemy of the best. What's got to be done sometimes gets in the way of what is the best thing to be done.